Attention all farmers. Are you tired of spending countless hours on crops that yield little to no return? Well, it's time to say goodbye to those unproductive fields and make room for crops that will bring you success. In this video, we're sharing with you the top crops that you should never waste your time on growing. Say goodbye to low profits and hello to a more efficient and profitable farming experience. First on the list of unproductive crops list is winter squashes. They include varieties such as pumpkins, delicata, butternut, acorn, and spaghetti squash. I've never grown spaghetti or acorn squash personally, but they're all similar in their pros and cons. The size of the plants is a big problem with all types of winter squash. The vines of full-sized pumpkins in particular get huge.
This little seed can grow into a massive pumpkin like this. In fact, the world record holder.
Some can get 25 feet long with an equal spread. That's a lot of space in the garden for one plant. You can mitigate this somewhat by growing most winter squash varieties on trellises. Just make sure they are strong. Full-sized pumpkins can't be grown on a trellis because the weight of the pumpkin is too much for the vine to support. Other types of pumpkins, on the other hand, will be fine because the vines will get stronger as the fruits get heavier. The problem is the plants don't seem to be very productive given how big they are. When I grew butternut squash, I rarely got more than one fruit per plant. Even the smaller squashes like delicata.
Spray, you can use a spray of your choice, sea salt, and then the delicata. Next, I'm going to slice.
Don't produce a large number of fruits per vine. The second con I've had terrible trouble with when growing any winter squash variety is both squash bugs and squash vine borers. They are voracious, and the numbers they attain are just ridiculous. Trying to grow an organic garden and get rid of a lot of these two pests at the same time is a frustrating task. There are multiple ways to deal with them with several organic options you can try. No matter what you do, you'll likely have these pests, and if you're a beginning gardener, you may not want to put yourself through the frustration in your first few years. It can be frustrating enough to start a garden without planting fruits, vegetables, or other plants that these pests love. Another troublesome plant is the watermelon/cantaloupe.
Ripe or not, and you're gonna have to eat it. So I don't know what kind of melon this is or where it came from.
Again, like with winter squash, the biggest downside is how big the vines are compared to how much fruit you get. Even though watermelons and cantaloupe produce a little more than winter squash, the vines are still very big. Again, if you can grow them on trellises, this will help with the space problem, and all but the biggest watermelons can be trellised successfully. The second con is that watermelons and cantaloupes take a long time to grow. If you live in a colder zone like I do, you should definitely buy plants from a nursery or start your own seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. Even with starting my seedlings indoors, I've still run into cold weather problems and the tail end of the season while waiting for my melons to ripen. Which brings me to con number 3. I don't know if it's just me, but I have a hard time telling if watermelons and cantaloupes are ready to eat. Yes, there are ways to tell, but I still manage to pick at least one melon too early or too late every season. Next up, we have carrots.
Immediately following that, we would sow the carrots. At the end of the bed, we would sow a handful.
You might be wondering why I wouldn't tell you to grow carrots. So here's the deal. If your soil isn't perfect, fluffy, and free of stones, pebbles, or anything else that could stop their growth, your carrots will be twisted, short, and misshapen. To stop that from happening, you'll need to dig down at least 10 to 12 inches, whether by hand or tiller, depending on your preference. The soil must be loosened significantly, and all rocks and stones must be removed. So the biggest problem is that carrots are hard to grow. I've tried growing them completely in sand, and while it worked to an extent, I can't really recommend it yet because I need to make some more changes. If this method works for me, I'll be sure to let you know in the future. Another plant we can't leave out is the zucchini. Now, you really think I'm crazy, don't you? I mean, everyone grows zucchini, and every year there are a lot of jokes about how many there are. Here's the thing though, at least in my garden, every squash bug and vine borer within 10 miles seems to be drawn to zucchini more than any other crop.
Not with zucchini. I have 8-foot by 4-foot beds, and I have not planted.
Assiduous and constant vigilance, picking and squishing hasn't been enough to keep them from decimating my plants year after year. If you don't have a problem with them, you should definitely grow zucchini. If you do, be aware that you should plant more plants than you think you'll need or want, because the annoying creatures will find your plants and eat at least a few of them. Next up, peppers. I'm talking about sweet peppers in this case.
But peppers suffer from sun scald very easily. And sun scald is...
Since I've never grown jalapenos or other hot peppers, there are good arguments both ways with peppers, so I'll let you be the judge. Like tomatoes, to which they're related, peppers can be prone to blight and other diseases. So if you don't move them to a different part of your garden every year, you risk getting a really bad disease.
Peppers are one of the most fun crops to grow, no matter who you are, because there's really a pepper for everyone. You have your...
And probably shouldn't grow them. Peppers can be picky, just like tomatoes.
Tomatoes are the most popular vegetable grown in the garden. But a lot of times you end up with huge...
I've had years where they've done well, but other years where they've barely done anything. The funny thing is, I haven't been able to pinpoint what causes good years versus bad years, as I've had a great harvest in both wet and dry years. Of course, this makes things more difficult because I haven't been able to figure out exactly what's going on with them. If you do decide to grow peppers,
I'm going to show you how to easily grow peppers in containers so you can be harvesting fresh peppers from your backyard or porch.
make sure the soil is nice and well drained and has some organic matter added to it. You will have to feed them a few times a season. And make sure they have enough water. I've also found that it helps to grow 2 peppers in each hole. I don't know why it works, but they seem to get bigger and they help each other out. Finally, cauliflower. Cauliflower comes from the same family as broccoli and cabbage, which makes it a hard vegetable to grow.
Cauliflower. And cauliflower you plant about a quarter.
Cauliflower is a little tricky because it has a long growing season and it prefers it a little cool. Cauliflower doesn't like it too hot or too cold, so you have to start it early enough so that it's ready by the time it gets too hot in the summer, but late enough so that it doesn't get too cold. It grows best at temperatures between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, according to Bradley and Courtier. Cauliflower needs to be at the right temperature, but most plants also need to be blanched, which means that the stalks need to be bent so that the outer leaves come up and cover the top of the head. The leaves have to be tied together and have to stay that way until the head is fully grown. Cauliflower needs the right conditions to grow, but it can also be hurt by bugs like cabbage worms and diseases. That's all for today, guys. Which other crops do you believe we might have left out from the list? Comment below. Till next time, cheers.